Hello and a warm welcome to all. Here we present a group video for our assignment for the Cinematic Adaptation course. The blog, frame by frame, over which this video is presented, is a part of the second assignment for the course. In the blog, we explored Brother Grimm and Charles Perrault, fairy tales and their adaptations in the cinematic world. Each of us picked up a story and looked for its adaptation in the motion picture industry. This video will examine some jargons of the cinematic adaptation study and how they become relevant when a fairy tale is transformed through this camera's lens. Combined efforts of our group have gone into making this video and this blog. We are Ananti Muthukumar, Animesh Shukla, Harshvardhan Madhineni, Harshit Warikolu, and myself Shreya Gupta. Appropriation. Appropriation is a strategy used by post-colonial societies to showcase their version of their story, a way to criticize colonial rule. But appropriation is not only limited to this. It also means the ways in which an artist uses pre-existing text by making some changes that they feel is necessary to it and presenting it as their own. The most widely seen appropriation is cultural appropriation, where certain elements of one culture are used in different form of art, like a music video. It has also been seen that source text may or may not be acknowledged in this process of appropriation. The most common form of appropriation in making of fairy tales is when dark elements are suppressed to make it children friendly. Original fairy tales were used by parents to educate their children that if they don't do what is expected of them, then things can go ugly. An example of this can be seen in Little Red Riding Hood, where Red's mother asks her to stay on the path and go straight to her grandmother. But because Red is distracted by the wolf, she ends up being his meal. In the movies, the concept of happily ever after is generally employed to end the story, rather than going on further plot development. Certain versions of Sleeping Beauty point that Princess Aurora woke from her sleep not because of true love's kiss, but because she gave birth to princess children. This definitely was not suitable for young kids to see. In Maleficent, we see that Prince's kiss does not work in waking up Aurora, and it is ultimately Maleficent herself who loves Aurora truly and is able to wake her from sleep. In the certain textual versions of Snow White, the Wicked Witch is invited to Snow White's wedding, where she is forced to wear a pair of red-hot iron shoes. She is then forced to dance in the shoes until she drops dead. In the 1933 film, Betty Boop as Snow White, the magic mirror takes off the queen's body to pursue her. The magic mirror is defeated ultimately by one of the knights. Thus we see appropriation is a widely used technique in adaptation of fairy tales.
Intertextuality. The concept of intertextuality is a literary stating all works of literature are a derivation or have been influenced by previous work of literature. It can be of three types: appropriation, as discussed by Shreya, allusion, or parody. Moving to the second point, allusion. It is an implied or indirect reference to another text, person, event, etc. It's up to the audience to make that connection between the texts. An example of it is the movie Cinderella 2015. The scene which shows Secret Garden is actually an allusion to the text, The Secret Garden. The right pic here shows a snapshot from the movie, The Secret Garden, 1993. Moving to the third point, parody. It is a creative work designed to imitate and or make fun of a serious piece of literature, art, or music. Most often Disney uses funny characters that use parody to make us laugh. An example of it is Olaf from the movie Frozen. Realism and formalism. Realism has to do with objective reality, the way that you see the world as human beings and how we experience it. Thus, films that appear like the real world have a tendency towards realism. An example of it is the movie Free Will. It is based on a real world, but realism should not be confused with reality. Hansel and Gretel 2002 can be taken an example. Seeing the movie makes us realize that it is very realistic. but all the magical elements and the scenes of which tends it towards formalism. Thus, a movie cannot be entirely based on realism or formalism. Moving to formalism. Films that are highly constructed, highly stylized would demonstrate as having a tendency towards formalism. An example of it is Red Riding Hood 2011. Although both Freeway and Red Riding Hood depict the same story of Red Riding Hood, both use very different styles. Here, Red Riding Hood 2011 uses formalism. Formalism should not be confused with unrealistic. Also, formalism uses very different types of styles. An example of it can be taken as all the magical elements, various different types of creatures, or a highly stylized stunt scene.
So let's talk about metafiction and or breaking the fourth wall in 3 ways. So what is metafiction? So when the art tries to self-validate itself by examining its own elements of fiction, it's called metafiction. So it tries to pull you away from the illusion the story creates and makes you realize that everything is fictional related to it. It's an attempt to make the things real. So the 3 kinds of metafiction are explicit, direct, and critical. Explicit metafiction reminds you artfully that the story is fictional, such as in the example below, where the characters talk about the struggle of the animators to animate their very own sequence. So in this example, we can see how the character cushions the decision of creating this manga into an anime. And immediately there's another character that talks about and appreciates the animator struggle to create the very sequence that in which they are talking. Direct metafiction, as the name suggests, directly references the things in the movie, such as referencing the source material in the film that's based upon it, as shown in the example given below, in which the movie is based on Snow White. So in this Doraemon's movie, the Snow White's book, which is which the original story, is actually shown in the film, in the book form, which is a direct reference. And in another scene, we can see 2 characters talking about the original story of Snow White, which is again a direct reference or direct metafiction. Critical metafiction tries to question or describe or criticize itself for the viewers indirectly. This is a type of metafiction which is mostly dependent on the viewer's interpretation. Below is an example from the series in which the story revolves around the cruelty of large zombie-like creatures called titans that devour people. So here we can see a character talking to another character. Do you get a kick out of seeing titans eat people? Which can be actually asked to the viewers also. And there's another line which says, like, people are fascinated by cruelty. Even this can be interpreted by the viewers. And the same thing the viewers can also describe.
The patriarchal society has created a severe impact on literary texts and the silver screen as well. From the designation of roles only for visual appeal to glorifying male dependency, from casual misogynistic remarks to belittling the power of a woman, literature has seen it all. Several movies have tried to moral police, body shame, and demean women and its characters just because of their gender, and it is completely unhealthy to portray such instances on large platforms. Coming to the feminist perspective of fairy tales, given the time the fairy tales were written, which was between the 18th and the 19th century, where feminism was less heard of, the tales mostly portrayed female protagonists. Yet, these characters were not strong and independent. They relied on a male superior to make things better in their lives. The attitude of the characters, as in the original fairy tales, is frail, docile, and obedient, and most of all, they were helpless. But with time and the coming in of the feminist movements, the adaptations of fairy tales show a gradual change of the depiction of the same characters from fairy tales as girls who have strong opinions, who question gender roles, and the domination of heterosexual cis males. For example, the fairy tale Rapunzel is all timid and obedient, while the Rapunzel in Tangled was shown to be rebellious and someone who was curious and loved to explore. They even cropped down her gown and depicted her indulgence in adventure. A similar characterization can be seen in the 21st century adaptation of Sleeping Beauty, Maleficent, where Aurora is not calm and compliant. She wanders in and around the forest and is curious and poses questions about everything. Speaking about the movie Freeway, the director through Lutz's character, the Little Red Riding Hood's parallel, shows the misogyny females can face in this vicious world. Vanessa Lutz is a brave and strong woman who sails through the several horrifying incidences and overcomes them with her willpower. The movie is a treat for feminists. Speaking about Snow White, in the adaptation Snow White and the Huntsman, Snow White performs warrior like roles where she rides a horse and even sword fights against trolls and enemies, which has definitely uplifted the character's weightage. In a very recent Disney movie, Ralph Breaks the Internet, there is a scene where Vanellope meets the Disney princesses, some of whom are those from the Grimm Brothers fairy tales. All these girls are in a casual attire, as in pajamas, and seem to be relieved and also express the same. This scene speaks volumes about how far feminism has sailed and also succeeded to change the perspective of the people on the whole. Yet, we still can see in several movies that a girl needs a man to attain her happily ever after. That a particular body size and skin color is the only way to a perfect livelihood for a woman. How women are still a material for visual pleasure on exhibits, while their desire did not matter. Even though the adaptations of fairy tales today have made a huge leap to convey about feminism, there has not been a single portrayal of the non-binary ideology, something which should be widely included in the fairy tales. To conclude, fairy tales and its adaptations is a great way to analyze feminism and its journey with time, and is also a good indication about how people perceive the motion. It is very important to maintain the originality of the text, but more important to appropriate them to build a more broad-minded and inclusive society through this mass media of movies and literature.
Aspect of fairy tale adaptations. Basically, there are two types of sounds, diegetic sounds and non-diegetic sounds. Diegetic sounds include sounds which have the source or origin in the films, in the story world of the film, while non-diegetic sounds are sounds that do not originate from the film's world. Let's see how diegetic sounds have been used in fairy tale films. There are three major use cases of diegetic sounds: dialogues, object sounds, and diegetic music. Diegetic dialogues includes dialogues spoken by the characters present in a particular scene. We see that the number of dialogues in fairy tale films is relatively low, and the dialogues are highly melodramatic. Let's see an example.
Well, it may come as quite a shock. Shock? My Philip, a shock? What's wrong with my Philip? Nothing, Hubert. I only meant... Why doesn't your daughter like my son? Now.
Object sounds are sounds of objects in the film. This can include sound of a moving cart, air, water, etc. These sounds are often combined with dialogue or non-diegetic music, but are made more noticeable to make the film seem realistic. Let's look at an example and concentrate on how the sounds of grass, drop, and knife are clearly noticeable.
Maleficent?
The third major use case of diegetic sound is diegetic music. Diegetic music is any music whose source is inside the film. In fairy tales, this is mostly a character singing or an instrument being played. Character singing a song is very common in animated films and is rare in live action ones. Now let's move on to non-diegetic sound. The three major use cases of non-diegetic sound are non-diegetic music, sound effects, and narration. Non-diegetic music is also commonly known as background music. It is often used in both animated fairy tale films and live action ones to set the scene's tone and manipulate emotions of the viewers. This combined with the visuals of the scene make the film more pleasing. Sound effects are short, specific audio clips that are added to give an emotional effect to a sudden action or a dramatic change in a scene. Let's see an example. Concentrate on the short sudden sounds when Aurora touches the spindle and when Maleficent appears.
Touch the spindle. Touch it, I say. You poor simple fools.
The third major use case of non-diegetic sound is narration. Narration is a non-diegetic sound as the source or the narrator is not present in the scene. Narration is widely used in fairy tale films to convey thoughts and feelings of the characters and to tell parts of the story and skip through eventless periods of time. Thank you.